Okay, now I'm going to get into the details of my court case against Chung Dahm Learning for unfair dismissal, which I had lodged initially at the Labor Commission in Daejeon. Um, I just want to say that I have the rulings for this case, and this is a public document, so I'm allowed to refer to all of this. Um, So basically, after I'd lodged this case against them, of course, Chung Dahm contacted me by email, and they were really quite angry and shocked that I'd lodged a case against them. And they were arguing that I had just voluntarily left and decided not to work for them. This is not exactly true. They provided a video from their CCTV cameras that they have installed in every room, and they sort of misconstrued my words, and so they had a video of me saying, "No, I'm not teaching it. I don't want to teach it." So in this video I was referring to this advanced reading course. I never made any sort of any sort of comment that I just wasn't going to work for Chung Dahm. I was sort of I was venting my anger about this advanced reading course and and the training. So basically they just said, well, you didn't redo the mock, and you said that you couldn't work for us, so you just left on your own terms, and you left voluntarily, so that's not our fault. We didn't do anything. So that was their argument, which I disagreed with. I said, there's no way that I would spend all this time, all this money coming to Korea to work for you to just sort of, walk out after 5 minutes. That's an absolute ridiculous assumption to make about my situation. So anyway, we exchanged all sorts of statements, and it was sort of mediated via the Labor Commission. So I wrote statements, which I provided the law firm with, and they sort of sent that back and forth to the Labor Commission, and Chung Dahm sent statements, and that sort of went on for a while. And then, as we could not actually come to an agreement and settle out of court, we had the court hearing in late September. There's nothing all that much to report about the actual hearing itself, because it was all in Korean, and I couldn't understand what was going on. I had a few, little bits here and there translated by my labor attorney who was sitting next to me, but for the most part, I didn't really know what was going on. So there were, like 5 judges sort of at the front, and they all just spoke in Korean, and I didn't really know what was going on. So there's nothing much I can tell you about the actual court hearing itself, other than I'm sure that my labor attorney did his very best to argue the point about sort of bringing me here, and not telling me about any of this, and not giving me a good enough chance to actually pass that training, and that I'd been treated unfairly, and that they were my employer and had an obligation to to follow some sort of protocol for dismissing me, and which they didn't. So yeah, there's nothing much else to report about the court hearing. So after the court hearing, I think we had something like, it was only about like 3 days, I think, to come to settle out of court. So they said, right, you have 3 days to discuss compensation between yourselves, and if you can't come to an agreement, we'll make a ruling. So this was on like a Friday afternoon, I believe, and so we had basically the weekend to come to an agreement. And of course, Chung Dahm does not contact us, so there is no sort of negotiation sort of going on. So Chung Dahm was meant to contact us and discuss some sort of compensation to settle out of court. So the ruling was going to be made at like 5 p.m. The next Monday. So that happens, and then I get a call from my labor attorney to tell me that we had lost the case, and he was quite surprised that we'd actually lost the case, because I had actually quite a strong case against Chung Dahm. They believed, the law firm believed, and basically what what the Labor Commission in Daejeon had decided was that the contract that I had with Chung Dahm, this agreement for teaching services, so that's the document that I'm referring to if you're going through the recruitment process at the moment, or if you've been through it. This is the final um, contract that you get from Chung Dahm before you leave to come to Korea. So this is the one that they supply to Korean immigration to get your visa that you have signed and they have countersigned. And anyway, the Labor Commission decided that in this um, this agreement for teaching services, they decided that it was not a valid contract and that this was not a contract at all. It was just an invitation to come to Korea with the possibility of taking up employment with Chung Dahm, at a later time. So this contract that Chung Dahm had given me was not really a contract at all. It was an invitation. So Chung Dahm had not brought me to Korea as their employee. They had brought me. They had invited me to Korea, and that they didn't really have any sort of obligation, to fulfill because they weren't my employer. So I hear this and I think this is just, ridiculous. How can it not be a valid contract? You need to supply a valid contract to get your work visa. That's the requirement for Korean immigration to actually get a work visa. You need an employer and you need a valid contract. So what Chung Dahm has actually been doing is supplying Korean immigration with documents that are not worth the paper they're written on. It's just a piece of paper. It's completely worthless and it is not recognized under Korean law. So that was the ruling. That firstly, that this contract was not a contract at all, and secondly, there was also some reference to something that was written in the temporary sort of offer of employment that I referred to in an earlier video. And I'll just read this excerpt out of this offer of employment. It says here, by signing below, you agree to successfully complete the instructor training session to acquire the Chung Dahm Learning Instructor Certificate prior to being fully employed at Chung Dahm Learning Schools. Refusal of training and or deliberate poor performance as determined by Chung Dahm Learning will make or render null and void any and all offers made by Chung Dahm Learning. Chung Dahm Learning will not be responsible for any costs incurred as a result of a candidate's failure to complete training. So, there was also a reference to this particular clause from the offer of employment, which was a document that I had signed. However, I felt that the judges at Daejeon had actually misunderstood this clause, because this is really I didn't really feel that this was that this clause could sort of be attributed to what had happened to me. So it says here, refusal of training. I didn't exactly refuse to be trained. I was there for the whole week. The only thing that I refused was to redo that mock that Friday evening, because I was expecting to come back the next week and complete another week's training, or deliberate poor performance as determined by Chung Dahm. So, deliberate poor performance. I was not giving a deliberate poor performance. That is, that's complete nonsense. And as determined by Chung Dahm, well, the truth of the matter is that everything is determined by Chung Dahm. So if Chung Dahm doesn't like you, they can fail you on the training week and throw you out on the street. So basically, the moral of this story is that if you do come to Korea to complete this training week for Chung Dahm Learning, one, the contract that you have is not valid. Chung Dahm is not your employer, and they can throw you out on the street without any real reason. They may not like your hairstyle. They may not. You might ask too many questions. You might be too critical of their, unorthodox teaching methodology. So basically, what this is saying is Chung Dahm takes no responsibility for you, and after this court ruling, they're not your employer either. Okay, so after the ruling had been made, I had the possibility of appealing the decision to the National Labor Commission in Seoul, and at that point I just really didn't see much point in appealing it because um, after all the experience I had had with Chung Dahm and Korean immigration and the Labor Commission, I had a much more realistic um, sort of impression of Korea and what sort of a country it was, and I don't think I really had that in the beginning. So I saw absolutely no point in appealing this decision because I did realize that there is a lot of corruption in Korea, and it could have been possible that Changdam may have, you know, paid some sort of a bribe to the court. I'm not going to rule that out. I'm not saying they did that, but um, you know, this is Korea, and there's a lot of corruption going on, and um, I think a lot of people coming here to teach English probably aren't really aware of the extent of the corruption and dishonesty that goes on in Korea. So at that point, I had no intention of appealing this decision. But my labor attorney, um, he was so confident that he could win the appeal case because he said this is such a sound case and this is a completely legal working contract, and to say that it's not a proper contract is just ridiculous. And so he was so confident that he could win this case that he offered to appeal the decision and represent me in court for free. He was that confident that he could win. So I thought, all right, if it's not going to cost me anything, I've got nothing to lose, and we can appeal the decision, no problem. So we appealed it, and to cut a long story short, we had the appeals hearing in December of 2009. And you know, like the first hearing, not an awful lot to report. It was all in Korean, and I couldn't really understand what was going on. And then we had 2 weeks to settle out of court, and then after the 2 weeks, again, so no real proper negotiation on Changdam's behalf. We sort of tried to contact them, they didn't get back to us, so they sort of refused to negotiate. And sort of at the end of that 2 weeks, they made a ruling, and they decided that the first ruling in Daejeon was valid. Okay, so after all of this, I did actually manage to stay in Korea. I managed to find another job, which was quite a time-consuming process. I had to get new visa documents, um, you know, criminal background check, you know, everything that I'd needed for the first visa. I needed to get all over again. And I can tell you that getting these documents from Korea is a lot more difficult to organize than if you were organizing all of this back in your home country. So organizing visa documents from Korea can be quite difficult, and you really need someone to help you in your home country, such as a family member. Otherwise, it's borderline impossible. Um, so. Um, I did manage to find another job, and I got my visa documents, and then I managed to get a new visa. I went to Japan and managed to get a new visa for this second job, and I started working in October. So I had arrived in Korea in July, and then so July, August, September, I had a broken leg and was unemployed, and had all of this sort of legal matters with Changdam. So I did eventually manage to sort of get back on my feet and find a job in Korea. Um, Quite a good job, probably better than what I would have had at Changdam. So things did sort of work out for me in the end, but I had an awful lot of bullshit to get through, all thanks to Changdam. So yeah, that's pretty much my story about about my experiences with Changdam. And in my final video, I would just like to give some final thoughts about Changdam, about coming to teach English in Korea, what you need to be aware of, and Korean immigration and just Korea in general. So I'm just going to be giving my final thoughts and advice in the next video.